Welcome to Grokking Gist. In today's episode, we hope that you will begin your journey of understanding gist so thoroughly that the observer will become part of the observed, as Robert Heinlein said in Stranger in a Strange Land. So anyhow, what we're going to do today is just talk about how people generally try and understand ontologies, and in particular some ways to go about understanding gist. So let's first start by opening it up. I'm going to open it up in Protege, as we did the other day. We just opened it straight off the web. It's open. And here's what I've watched a lot of ontologies. Here's what is probably the most normal thing for someone to do. They go to the class tab, they open it up, and they take a look to kind of get an idea what kind of classes you have here. And in particular, I think this is what object-oriented people do. You know, they realize there's a high-level set of concepts, and they want to kind of get their heads around them. And that's a reasonable place to start. What's interesting that almost nobody does, I think because they think it won't make much difference, is to go into the Inferred tab. And here we're going to run the reasoner, because if there are a lot of axioms, as they are in GIST, you'll notice that our inferred hierarchy is considerably shorter and different than the asserted one. All the same stuff is still there, but we get a different top level. You know, we can go in and study all the individual definitions and figure out why that would be so, but you know, it's not too hard to imagine. One of the other ways that people generally go about understanding a new ontology, or at least I would recommend they do this, I don't think that many people do, is to go look on the Active Ontology tab and get just an idea of the size of the thing you're dealing with here. So for instance, this set of GIST ontologies in total contains 140 classes. So a reasonable amount, but not an impossible amount. Many ontologies you open will have thousands, and some will have a handful. And a smaller number of object properties, and an even smaller number of data properties. So that seems pretty good. There's not many individuals in here, and this expressivity tells us that it uses a lot of OWL. These little letters stand for things that say whether it uses disjointness and qualified cardinality, things like that. And there are, relatively speaking, a lot of axioms here. So it's a highly axiomized ontology, which means it's not just a simple subtype, supertype tree. You should expect to see lots and lots of axioms in there. One of the other ways to kind of get an idea of how an ontology is put together, especially if it's if it's not just a monolithic ontology, is to look at the importing strategy. So for instance, we opened up what we call GIST core, and it imports about 5 or 6 ontologies, which in turn, kind of recursively, and there's a lot of duplication in here, but as you know, with OWL, that duplication isn't a problem. We just have multiple things that refer to the same thing. But an easier way to get your head around that would be, we drew a little picture on our website. If you want to actually visually see what the inheritance looks like, if you decided you wanted GIST core, that's eventually going to import all the pieces. If all you wanted was just ID, it would import the top. You know, physical things have IDs and magnitudes need unit of measure, etc. And there's a few little clues. This is just a drawing. This is not a live implementation, but it gives you some ideas about how all the pieces are put together. We've also supplied on our website a link to get the documentation we use to author GIST. So it comes in Visio and PDF. I'm going to use the Visio version here because I'm going to show you some things here. But this is our authoring environment. As you can see, there's a tab for every one of the ontologies. one of our objectives was to have each tab be, therefore each ontology be simple enough that you could just grasp it pretty much in its entirety. Some of these are extremely simple, as you can see, and there's a handful of them that have a little bit more involved, like magnitudes have a few more classes, but for the most part, most of them are small enough to be understood in their totality. But just as an aside, we'll have a whole nother session on this, but the owl is actually generated directly from the diagram here. So when you, for instance, this one called duration, if I were to output, this is the owl that part of the diagram generates, and obviously if I right click on the whole diagram, I get an ontology. That's how we keep the documentation up to date with the diagram. But what I really want to talk about is what we call the concrete abstractions. So many upper ontologies at the top level have very abstract concepts, enduring pedurance and things like that, or there's many similar to that. But one of the things we decided to do with GIST was base it on a small number of things that virtually everyone could understand and agree on. And these are things like, and we're going to have a long session about each of them, but I'll just kind of cruise over them right now. Categories, which are taxonomies; collections; intentions, which are goals; languages, both human and computer languages; magnitudes, which is how we measure things; organizations; people; content, including documents and audio, things like that; intellectual property, which is abstract from the content; obligations, which is a key thing for most business systems. This is where purchase orders and invoices and insurance and everything lives; physical things, I forgot why I had a yellow highlight on this, but don't pay any attention to that. This is anything that takes up space, has mass. Places are things that we can locate on maps, regions and points and the like. Time intervals are units of time on a calendar, and units of measure what we use to convert magnitudes. So if you can get those, and then if we can go back to the inferred class hierarchy here, you'll see them, and pretty much all of GIST resolves from that. So that's kind of just how to get started, looking around, exploring, what GIST is. Many of these things have, reasonable narrative definitions as well as formal definitions. And I'll leave it there because we'll have a lot more sessions in detail about, what do each of these little topical areas mean and how are they composed. Thanks.